I am now. Hey guys, and welcome to Author Chat. We are here today with Danika Stone as well as DK Stone. If I can get all the books in the shot here. It's so hard to remember which way to go because everything's reversed. And her series, so excited to have you here. These covers, I mean, I remember seeing these covers on Instagram and be like, you know what, I gotta get her on the show. Have you been on the show before? Because I know that I read one of your other books.
I'm not sure if I was.
Internet Famous was so good.
Oh, thank you. I love that book. It's like my quiet book. Not everybody has read that one, but I just love it. It just, I don't know, warms my heart, that one.
I have a copy of All the Feels. It's in one of my massive totes of TBR, so I will eventually get to it.
Oh, awesome.
I'm really excited for that. I love those. They're so cute.
Thank you. I think you'll like that one too.
So thank you so much for coming on. I know that we had issues the last time. Internet is horrible.
Thank you so much just for rolling with it and just letting me come back later. I so appreciate that. Thank you.
I have learned you just deal with it and just reschedule, because especially now that back when this first started going on and all the kids just all of a sudden had to be on the internet and everything, it went from you never knew when it was going to go out. You might have it one day, the next second it's gone.
Yeah.
You just kind of had to go with the flow.
Yes,
we just got lucky.
Yeah. It's funny. We had to get a little, I don't even know what it's called, a hub where it kind of boosts the signal a bit, because it's true. This whole area just where so many people are using it now for school, like you say, you just need a little bit more of a signal. So it's good, but I'm wired in today.
Where's my satellite phone?
Exactly.
Well, guys, guys, sorry. As you can see, I have work brain today. I was at work for most of the day. You guys know the drill. If you have any questions, you can toss them into the live chat below or wherever you happen to see it. If for some reason YouTube isn't permitting you to do that, you can tag me on Twitter or Instagram or DM me, and I will post your questions. So, of course, to start out with, tell us a little bit about you and your journey to becoming an author.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me, Jessica. I'm just super excited to be here. My journey to being an author was just not what I expected it to be. I was at university and I was I was writing a thesis because I was trying to do a master's, and I just started hating writing. And it was weird because I actually used to really like doing kind of nonfiction research. And I just got to a point where I didn't love writing anymore. And I remember laying on the bed and just saying, I think I need to quit. I put all this money into this degree and I can't. And my husband was really good about it. He was just like, you know what, do something you love. And what I loved is I loved writing fanfic. I did. And I have no problem with saying that. Oh my gosh, it was like my escape. And at that time, Battlestar Galactica had just ended and I had never watched it. And so my friend Ryan, he was like, you should really watch the show. And I was like, this is sci-fi. I don't know if I'd love it. And he was like, yeah, you'll totally love it. And I did. I fell in love just with the whole show. And I just met this great fandom online. And I was just like, whoa, these are my people. And so what I would do is I'd make myself do my assignments for university. I'd force myself to write the stupid chapters. And at the end of it, I would just write for me, which was just fun stuff, just doing whatever I wanted. I didn't like how that episode ended. I'm just going to rewrite that ending. And it became this thing that I discovered I really loved. And there's actually a lot of authors who get into writing that way, where it's just joy. So that was for a long time, that's what I did. And it was kind of my escape. And I finished university and I was like, oh, never going to do that again. But the writing was so fun. I started discovering I had these characters I wanted to write about. They weren't characters from any TV show I was watching. Because I then watched The 100 and, all these other shows. And I started writing these books kind of for me. And they really started becoming books. And I remember I had this idea about writing about the town where I came from. So my family's from Waterton, which is literally the smallest town ever in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. And I wanted to write about what would it be like to go there and just have somebody after you. Cause like I was out there just making sure the cabin, like the door hadn't blown in and stuff like that. Like it's just like nobody's there. So we did a quick run out there to just check on it. And it's literally like, there's not even a gas station open. There's no place to get food. We couldn't park in the backyard because there was a drift half the size of the house. So I thought like that would be a really cool place. And I wanted to write kind of like a mystery. So I started working on that book, and I wrote and wrote and wrote. And then at the same time, I had these other kind of stories I wanted to jump into. And I really loved fandom. And I wanted to write a story about almost like my love story for fandom. Like, what was it like to fall in love with fandom? And kind of that became the first draft of All the Feels. So I had these two completely different books. All the Feels, I published as Danika Stone, and that one was picked up by Spoon Reads, Macmillan. And it really talks about a fangirl who's, her favorite character gets killed off in a series, kind of like Battlestar Galactica. And she's just like, no, I'm not going to let that happen. And it's about how she brings this character back from the dead with her best friend, and how they go to Dragon Con. And it was just like really fun. And at the same time, I was also working on this mystery book that had become so large. My agent was like, honey, like you need to like break that book up. So, cause all three parts were originally one giant book. And he was like, no, goodness. Like this is too much.
That's a big book.
It would have been a crazy, like, cause I had no idea what I was doing. So I broke it off. Like there was the first part was the idea of like the outsider comes to town and there's like a serial killer after him. And what is it like to be in this town where it's really creepy and you're all by yourself and it's winter still and the townspeople hate you. And it's just almost got a feel of almost like Castle Rock, the way that Stephen King kind of has this little fictional town. So it isn't the real town. And it was funny, those both came out in 2016. So it was just kind of this neat way that these two different parts of my life, like living in the mountains and then also being part of fandom, and that kind of connected me with people around the world. And they just kind of, suddenly I was a writer, like something that just felt like such an impossible thing for the longest time. It was suddenly real. And it was like, I don't know, I never want to lose that feeling. Like to me, it is such just a joy to get to do that. I sense you've got that too, Jessica, like that kind of feeling of like, you just love books. And I think some people forget that love. No, like that's why you do it. That's why you get up at 5 a.m. because your kids aren't up, and you write every day, because that's like the joy part. And then since then, I've been just lucky enough that, Edge of Wild, the publisher Stonehouse was like, yeah, we would love to read the next one. So I was like, great, I happen to have it. And
I think that's got to come in handy that you had all of it done and you didn't have to like really worry about much like, oh, hey, we want next one. Well, there you go.
Exactly, because all the rough draft was done. And so people would be like, how did you plan in things for book 3 that started in book 1? And I was like, well, and the answer is like, it was all one book at one point. But yeah, so that was kind of my foray into writing. And I'm not skipping over like the bad parts. Like when people are saying like, I'm getting so disheartened, I can't get an agent. Oh my gosh, guys, like I have more than 100 rejections just from the very first time that I tried to get an agent. So yeah, I definitely had some of that too. But I think as long as you never lose that love of what you're doing, like the love of where you are in writing right now, eventually, to quote my first agent, he's now retired, Morty said, like, it takes one person to fall in love with your book. And that's all he said to me. And I was like, that's true. Like, how many times have you sent it out? Well, maybe you just need to send it out one more time. And so when I sent it to him, I remember he was on vacation and he started reading the first chapter. He stopped what he was doing. He didn't go hiking with his family and he just read the rest. So one person falls in love and that's your entrance. And that was my start then to kind of writing professionally. I certainly consider my fanfic days absolutely just as real, and they were so much fun. And I still on the side occasionally like, you know, the 100, oh, here's something that happened. I would like to write about that. Just random stuff that I'm interested in. Just to keep that joy going.
It'd be kind of interesting if you could like go back and mesh some of your fan fiction together and like do something with it.
That would be so cool. And certainly those, because, you know, when you're writing, and especially if you're writing a series and you have those characters, for me at least, I started having these characters I wanted to write that, because my characters never listen to me, they just do what they want. And some of those characters did eventually kind of become their own people, I guess. It's so weird. It makes it seem like I'm channeling them or something, but that's really how it feels. Like when I'm writing, it's just like, I have no control over what these characters do. They just kind of take off and they're on their own. And I just waking up in the night transcribing. It sounds so weird when I put it that way, but that's really how it is, where you just kind of, for me, it's all about just kind of getting in flow and then just writing what the character wants to do. And sometimes it's like crazy, but for me, that's the best writing, where I'm just like, I don't know what they're doing. Oh, wait, look, that's what they're doing. Oh, this ties in. I don't know. You have to kind of set yourself free. Clearly, I'm not an amazing planner, because that means my plans go off. But I don't know. It's okay.
So for the Waterton series, what was the hardest thing about writing that one?
There's a couple things. So I'm going to give two answers. The first part seems really obvious. So like I knew the townspeople, right? And when I write about the townsfolk, the kind of townies hating outsiders, like part of that is things that like my dad would say. He'd be like, well, nobody who moved to town after 1940, they're not really from Waterton. And I was like, why 1940? That seems really weird. I don't know, because there's a bunch of rude families. So I was really scared that some of the people in town would like be offended. So I wrote the books, and the first one was getting published, and I was having this like kind of panic, like they could be really mean to me. Like they know my family, they know everything about me. So I wrote everyone I knew in town, like closely. And I was like, hi, it's Danika. I just need to tell you, I wrote this book. It is not about you, kind of thing. And just explains that it was just fictional. And I changed all the names of like even the places. I remember doing that. Like Stonehouse was like, are we good to go? And I was like, oh, wait, I'm going to name all of the like hotels and everything. There's only one hotel I kept the same name, and it's because it's like the most famous hotel. Mm-hmm. So I sent that letter off. That was one part, was the really hard, like kind of leaping off the edge and letting people judge. And I heard afterwards, like all winter, people were trying to like figure out who was who. Yeah, but they're not. They're fictional characters. That was one hard part. The second hard part is like when you've made these characters you love, for me at least, it's hard to kill them. And when you write a mystery series, like if I want people to care about a character, I can't just have random new people show up all the time. It's like, oh yeah, well, he will die clearly. So instead, I wanted to kill off some of my characters that you knew from the town. So like you'd know them for a couple books, and then they might be the one who ends up being murdered. And I know there was one death, and I won't say who it is, but I wrote it. It's in book 2. And when I wrote that death, I just sat there and cried. Like I just felt so bad. And it's the death that people like will write to me and be like, I can't believe you did that. Like, what are you, a horrible person? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but it was the right story. And then just to have that reaction to your own, like, it's not a real person, really. It's not, but it was the right ending for that person. And when I sent it to my editor, I remember Dinah writing me back, and she said, whoa, I didn't see that coming. But once I read it, that was the only way it could go. And I was like, okay, that's the right reaction. I just don't want anyone to hate me. And she was like, oh, Danika, people will hate you, but it's still okay. So I had to let that happen, because that was the right way for the story to go. But oh, it was hard. I cried while I was writing it. I cried when I was editing it. I cried later when the ghost showed up, you know, like you have this like, kind of ending moment. It was hard.
So do you think that you'll do any more like adult mystery thriller books at all, or?
I do. And in fact, right now I have one that's on submission. I'm trying to think. It's more of a thriller. I guess it's sort of a mystery as well. It's got a little bit of more sci-fi elements. It's in the very near future where there's an accident in a lab and we're trying to figure out like what's happening in the lab, who caused it. It's got a tiny bit of paranormal, just a little bit to it because these two sisters, one of them who was at the lab when the lab is destroyed, the other one who's still alive, but she really senses her sister is not dead, but nearby. So yeah, that one's on submission and I'm like, fingers crossed. I love that book and I would love to see that one get picked up at some point. So you never know. This year, it just feels like, the world is like burning. I'm out here going, please buy a book. It happens.
That's crazy. That sounds really good though. Definitely up my alley.
Awesome. Well, if it gets picked up, and I really hope so. Right now it's on submission for a couple different places and then it goes a little wider, but I'm really hoping someone falls in love with it. It's a fun book and it's a thriller.
Mm-hmm. See, so how did you get the inspiration for Switchback?
Well, there was a couple things. So first of all, Jean Fywell from Fywell and Friends and Swoon Reads, she knew that I had a place in Waterton. And so like I often will post just random pictures, like here's the giant drift in the backyard blocking me from parking. So she had said, like that might be kind of a fun place to set a story. And I had done a couple books that were very, like focused around fandom, around the internet and cultures online. What if you kind of did something a little different? And as soon as I heard that, I just realized, like my cousin who like grew up in the area, he was hiking and kind of got turned around. They were sort of between BC and Alberta, so two provinces. And he had grown up there and he ended up walking the wrong direction, just kind of got turned around and really could have been lost forever. And that's someone who grew up there, but sometimes the trails get very narrow. And just that moment, like he was very calm about it. He eventually found an outfitter in the middle of nowhere who told him where he was. And then he was able to turn around and walk back and walked all the way back to the park. But that could have gone so badly if you had someone who didn't know. So with those two pieces of just kind of ideas, prompts, I decided that I would have kind of like a class trip. And like Waterton is a beautiful area. You have lots of schools bring kids there and then have two of the kids kind of get separated. And I wanted to have two. I didn't want it to be the stereotypical, like, the girl is saved by the boy. They're best friends, but the girl's the one who actually has any idea about what she's doing. And I had this other character and he was a gamer and he has in some ways some really great ideas and he's certainly like well-meaning, but he has no idea what he's doing in the woods because I need someone to get them really lost and I need someone to mess up so that they have to figure their way out. And I just had this friendship story about Ash and Vale just kind of emerge and I loved their friendship. And I never wanted it to be like a love story other than best friends. And I definitely felt that. And I've had such good reaction to people like, like just this idea, like nobody has to be saved. They both work together. They save each other. They're best friends. There's no like romance moment. It's just these best friends really caught in a life or death situation. And it's funny, that book is the one that'll have people, I get them in some awful, awful situations, like the worst things I'd ever want to have happen. Get them there. And that's when people will stop reading and be like, please tell me that they make it through. And I'm just like, keep reading, guys. Because they've got to figure their stuff out too. You got to keep reading. So it's good though. It's a fun book. And I was really excited that because it's a Canadian book, it takes place in Canada, in that little tiny, just outside the little tiny town of Waterton in the mountains. And the Canadian Children Book Center actually chose it as one of their best books last year. And I was like, yes, little tiny book about a park in Canada. And it did. People really enjoy that one. It's a very kind of boy and girl friendly book. I really like that one too.
Kind of just makes me think now. It's like for people that are doing survival stories and stuff. It's like, okay, how am I going to get you lost in the woods? Well, you're going to trip and fall down an incline or something, and you just can't make it back up that way.
Exactly. I always, whenever I'm doing like a workshop for writing, I always talk about, for me, the easiest way to plot is I'll write down all the terrible things that could potentially happen, in like on a class trip, say, because that's kind of the premise. And so starting with like the harassment of the bullies, like there was people I went to school with. I would be happy if I never see them again. Okay, so Vale experiences a lot of that. And so that kind of sets it off like they're kind of staying a little way from the group, all the way to like, what are some of the bad things that happen? I hate having to go to the bathroom in the woods. I do, it's gross. That's very small though, all the way up to the very worst, which would be like dealing with a bear attack. And that actually happens in the book as well. And for me, like my dad, I know had a moment when he was in his early 20s where he came face to face with a starving grizzly, and the bear really had been looking to attack them. He was way up north, and the bear had been like stalking the men at the camp. Okay, so like that moment of when my dad used to tell that story about what is it like to actually think you're going to die, and this animal is starving, so it's not even thinking clearly. And my dad was very lucky. He walked away from it. But what would it be like if you're these two kids and one of you is hurt and you're out in the mountains and you don't know what to do, but you're obviously not going to let this bear drag your friend away. And so like, that's the far end. So I just organize it least terrible to, oh my goodness, are they going to die? And then I kind of just write in that order, not always that direction. I sometimes throw the scenes around, but that's usually how I plot it. And it makes it so it's hard to stop.
I actually really like that because, it gives you a starting point and something to at least follow without actually planning everything out.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes your brain will go like totally a different direction. This is not like a huge spoiler, but there's an avalanche. I did not plan that avalanche. I just kind of had them walking there. And as I was writing, my brain was like, oh, avalanche time. And then that was just like a really interesting moment that happened on its own. But for me, that kind of approach works no matter what book I'm writing. So even the Waterton series, like, early on in the books, it's usually small annoyances where you're feeling nervous. Is someone following me, or am I making that up in my mind? All the way to the ending is like, really, there is a killer in town. I'm now the next person in their crosshairs. And how do I get out of this mess when you're in a town where there's no connectivity, like your cell phone doesn't work and you're trapped and there's only one way in and out of the town. And I am totally doing a terrible job for advertising the town. But it's true. There is only one road in and out, and it's like right in the mountains. So if you couldn't get out, then you're really stuck.
Right. So do you think if you were the same age as these kids and you got lost in the woods, do you think you'd be okay?
I think I would be okay. The advice that my mom and dad would always give us kids is if we got lost, we were to just sit down and build a big fire. So like, that's what I would do if I was really lost, because one of the worst things you can do is just walk and keep walking, and the people can never find you because like someone would know you were gone. I got a review on Switchback, and I remember this person was so angry. They were like, this is terrible advice. Like these kids, that's the worst thing you could do. And I was like, well, I know. But like, how do I get them lost if they don't just keep walking? Otherwise, if they just sat down on the trail, someone would find them like 2 hours later. But instead, they just keep walking because they think they know where they're going. So they just keep walking, and they think they know their way back. So they keep walking, and they just make it much worse. So I think I would be able to survive. When I was a kid, we would always have, it was about this big, and it was like a whistle, and it would float, and you'd put in matches and stuff. And that's what we were always told to do by mom and dad, is just sit down, build a big fire, stay by the fire. We will find you. And so I'm sure I would have just done that if I was, a teenager and got lost. nowadays I'd probably do a similar thing, although I'm pretty good at really being careful about where I go and just being cautious so I don't get off track. And also I have kids, so I don't want them to get lost either.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I was like, whistle, they should have had a whistle.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And they don't.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
It's like I have to wonder, like, after, they get lost and everything and found and everybody gets back to the school. It's like, it's the aftermath of everything. How bad is the school going to get in trouble that they lost somebody?
Yeah.
You can see, like, next year, okay, guys, stay together, make sure you have your whistles. So we don't want to lose anybody this year,
Exactly. And it's scary. Like, I mean, I've never been on a trip with kids where any kid has gotten lost, but you do sometimes hear about stories where that has happened. And I couldn't imagine I can't imagine it. That's why I actually write some of the parts in Switchback are from that teacher's perspective of like, what have I done? Oh, and she just keeps walking and trying to find the kids. And because I would just freak out if it was me and it was kids that I had lost. Oh my gosh, that's like a nightmare. I can't imagine.
It's so crazy. So what title out of all of your titles was the easiest one to write?
Oh my goodness, the easiest one. Well, I mean, unpublished stuff, it would definitely be fanfic because it's usually much shorter and you're just you have something that is like an idea of like, oh, I'd love to spin it this way. And then you kind of go with it. So unpublished, it would be that. Of all the ones that were published, seems like Internet Famous it just flowed. Like I kind of knew what I wanted the characters to do. And I don't know, I really enjoyed that story. It was like a mystery on its own, but I just felt like I really knew the characters right from the beginning. That was a really neat, easy one. All the feels in Switchback too, they were also easy to write, but in different ways. Like all the feels, it was easy, the characters flowed, but I was scared because I wasn't sure I could kind of do it. It was early on. Switchback, I wrote it, and I always tell this for people who are struggling with edits. I remember I sent it to Holly, who was my editor at Macmillan, and I was like, oh, what do you think? And she was like, oh, we love Vale. And there was kind of a pause, and she was like, but we don't like the boy character, who was not Ash at that time. It was a different character. And so a couple years ago, so I'm trying to think, probably 2018, I then spent Christmas, actually the whole holiday, just taking this one character out and then putting Ash in instead and just rewriting that half the book. So even though the book itself flowed quickly, that rewrite was grueling. And I'm so happy that it ended up being Ash in the end, because it was a different character, but Ash, he just like on his own, he was like so much fun that as soon as I started writing him, I was like, oh my gosh, he's totally who we need. Like he has no idea what he's doing. And I loved how it turned out. And when I sent it back to Holly, so like holidays were done, it was, the new year. And I remember her just saying, oh, I really like Ash. And given how many stupid things he does, that's saying a lot. So it was really, it was a fun experience to have pulled a book apart and put it back together. And I think it's one of my strongest young adult books. And it was just neat how I remember that moment of, oh, I have to really rewrite this character. And it worked out just fine. Like I don't know, it added so much to their interactions to have this really fun, goofy character going along with Vale, who knew what she was doing. I don't know. It was just really fun.
So what have you been reading lately? And I'm so going to have to find my copy of Internet Famous so I can read it.
Okay, so recently I just bought, what is it? Demetra Brodsky. Hold on, I've got to find it. I've got it sitting beside. I'm going to totally use my computer right here. I never remember it. It's her first one, which I had never. I'm going to pop it open here so I can see it. Hold on. What's the name of the book? Because I just ordered it for myself and it just arrived. Okay. Oh, and I ordered a pile more books. My goodness, I've ordered a lot of books. Hold on. Dive Smack. Demetra Brodsky. That's the one that I'm just starting right now. I also finished Kevin Craig's. So this is now a little bit ago. I finished, I never remember names of books. It's the Camino Club. I just want to make sure I get the correct name. Yeah, the Camino Club. So that one I finished. So I will absolutely recommend that one as well. That one was about end of October. There was the Stranger Things prequel, and I can't remember the author on that one, that I also read, which I really enjoyed, because Stranger Things is one of my current fandoms that I really enjoy. I read, now this one is more serious. So I was teaching a English, like grade 12 English class, and I wanted to do something other than Death of a Salesman, which is totally fine. Like Death of a Salesman is a good book, or a play, but I wanted to do something a little more contemporary. And so that one is by Drew Hayden Taylor, and that one's called Someday. So it's a play, and it has to do with the 60s scoop, which happened in Canada, where a lot of Indigenous Canadians were taken from their families and placed in other homes, and then never to return to the families they were from. And so it's this play about these families reconnecting. So that one's very powerful as well. I'm trying to think what else. And then, of course, I've just been reading what I'm also teaching. So yeah, those would be the last couple. So Dive Smack is the one that right now I'm just at the beginning of. That one, as soon as I'm on holidays, I'm just going to hide away in my room and and read. I somehow missed it. Like I have her second book, but not the first one. So I ordered her first one for myself.
So do you have any other YA books coming out at all? Or
well, okay, so nothing again. Books on submission, you know, the world is like burning, and I'm like, hey, buy a book. So I actually have one that I had bits and pieces of it written. And in Alberta, so the province where I am, we went kind of into right away where things were starting to spread with COVID. We kind of closed down, and I finally took all the pieces and I put them together. So it's again a friendship story. And it's about a young man who he's a football star. That's going to be his life, you know, where he's going to a special school. We have them here, like where there's like football academies and stuff where the kids really are focused on that. He's being scouted, you know, by major colleges, and he's on the field and he goes into cardiac arrest. So I happen to have a heart condition, and I know that the times that it's kind of things have gone wrong, and I can kind of feel it. So like when each of my boys was born, oh, that was just not good. I didn't even know I had a heart condition then, but I certainly did afterwards. And so that moment of what does it feel like when your heart just won't do what it's supposed to do? And that starts off the book. And it just goes badly to the point he has to have surgery. And it's, what is it like to have to come back from that and find yourself again? So he can't go back to sports, like that's removed entirely. And he meets up with people at his school, and they're a group of D&D players, and it's just him finding this new way to have fun, be competitive, but he kind of doesn't know his place. Like, how do you let go of these best friends you've had for years, but you can't just goof around with them anymore? Oh my gosh, I had so much fun stitching together the bits and pieces, because that's kind of how I write. I'll write a scene I like, and then like a month later, I'll be like, oh, I've got this other scene, and meanwhile, I'm writing another book and editing. So that's what I did. I kind of put all those pieces together, and it was so much fun, and it was just this book of my heart. So I really, really hope that that one gets picked up too. That would be
that sounds really cute.
And it's funny, that one made me cry too. Not, I don't kill him off, don't worry, he makes it to the end. But just,
oh God.
Yeah, no, don't worry.
The movie did that. We went to watch what is it, Two Hearts, and
yeah,
or no, not two, oh no, yeah, it was Two Hearts, and it's like you think everything's gonna be okay from the trailers and stuff, and then everything turns out bad, and it's like by the time you're done at the theater, you can't see the movie anymore because you're just bawling so badly.
Yes. Don't worry, Jessica, I promise I don't do that. Yeah, no, but you know, I was like, again, I get really emotionally invested in these characters. Like you feel for them. And it's not an easy story because, you know, like it's hard to make friends, like, especially if you have a group you've always been with. I think sometimes, I don't know, even as adults, we have a hard time just kind of finding where we fit. And that's really what that whole story is about, is like, what if that's ripped away from you? This whole identity you have, like, that's what you're going to do as a career. Every night you practice and then it's gone. And I know for myself, when I found out I had a heart condition, I was like, no, like, I'm healthy. And they were like, no, you know, that thing that happened where your heart, like, all your blood pressure went down to nothing, like, that's not good. You could have died. And it was like a weird thing to, I don't know, it's just weird to even find out that your body is just in some ways broken. So I've never had to have surgery. I likely will have surgery at some point, but my cardiologist is like, we're just going to hold off just as long as we can. And so in the book, of course, I make it much more serious. Like, we have to have surgery right away. And then it's like him kind of trying to come back and try to be normal, even though he now has this condition that will always be with him and he'll always have to go forward. And I think people will love it. He is such a fun character. And the people around him, the group around him, the D&D players, they are so much fun. Like, I love them. I fell in love with the book as I was writing it. And so that one is out right now with my agent. So fingers crossed.
It just sounds like the first thing that pops into my head is like jock turns geek.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, there you go. That's how I should be pitching it. There we go. From you to Mosiers.
It's like, that just sounds like so perfect, you know, because usually, you know, a lot of times it's the opposite direction. You know, they hit puberty and they like, oh, well, you know, I don't need this anymore. I'm going to go play sports and stuff. And it's like, this is going the opposite direction. It's like, I really love that.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it's like a friendship story, and like, where do you find your place? Who are your people? And it's kind of heartbreaking when you lose people that you are close to and you love, you know, as friends. Like, it's weird, like, especially in teen years, those friendships are just as important as any relationship, like, as in romantic relationship. So yeah, it's a fun one. I hope it actually goes somewhere. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
My vote is yes.
Thank you. Oh, I hope so. So yeah, I have a couple books, and it's weird. So I mentioned 2 that are on submission. I actually have a couple other ones that are written, just kind of waiting for the right time. Sometimes it's not the right time for a book. You just kind of, I don't know, just set it aside for a bit, and then I'll come back to it when it's the right time.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. That's all the questions that we had today. Guys, make sure to check us out next week for our last 2 shows of the year. We will be talking with Amy Nicole Parks and her debut, The Quantum Weirdness of the Almost Kiss. There's that one. I love that cover. As well as Candace Robinson and Amber Ardul of Tin. I love this cover too. It's like so gorgeous. And they will both be coming on the 10th and 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It was